All right, guys, so we're getting into bleeding the brakes on Luke's truck. We got all the brakes hooked up. I think you guys seen us monkeying around with the brake lines a little bit. We got that all figured out. We just got to bend that one rear brake line down, and we might put one P-clamp on it, but we can do that after we do the brake lines, or after we bleed the brakes. Something to note on brakes. So I thought I'd mention this, because I know people that have had problems with this. So on these calipers, these are a 4-piston caliper, there's going to be a bleeder screw on each side, one here, top and bottom. Now the reason for that is these calipers, this caliper and this caliper are the same caliper, just flipped around. And that's the reason, so they don't have to make two different calipers, one for each side. So they just put extra bleeder screws in it. So the fluid comes in the middle, right here, and then it passes around through here on both sides. I get away. Comes in here and goes around and then comes up. Technically, like that's the way the air is going to move. So if you have to bleed, let me get on the other side so you guys can see better. A little more light on this side. So fluid comes in. There's a passage through here. I believe with these ones, there's also a passage through here as well, but you're going to get a good chance. I shouldn't say you're going to get a good chance that you'll get an air bubble up here and on both, like on both sides. That's the reason they have them on both sides. You need to bleed both sides of the highest point. Now, if you take these calipers, and if this caliper is mounted like this, if it's some sort of a different application, you'll need to take the caliper off and face it straight up and down, or as straight as you can get it up and down, to bleed the brakes. If it's like this, you won't bleed them properly. If you're having a problem with getting them to bleed, what I would recommend, even if it's like this, is bleed this like both of these, and then unbolt the caliper, flip the caliper, and then bleed the other side. But you shouldn't really have a problem. But one thing that I have noted with these things is that sometimes you'll have to bleed the brakes a couple times to get the brakes to come around. Because there is lots of little weird passages and stuff in these, so sometimes you will get some bubbles, but you will have to bleed both of these. So doesn't matter really. I don't think it matters which way you start on. I always start on the inboard one, come to the outside, go back to the inboard, come back to the outside, and back and forth until you have no air left. And sometimes you'll have to do it a couple times. Drive it, might have to bleed it again. It doesn't hurt to bleed them a bunch of times, in my opinion, other than you need to pull the wheels on and off, but is what it is. And you're doing race car stuff, you're doing race car stuff. So Jason's gonna pump the pedal. All right, guys, so we're still working on the S10, obviously. I just wanted to show you guys the rad. This set of fans came off of a Ford Contour, a 1998. Instead of using those fans, which don't pull near as much air, these pull way more air. So this is just, we went over to the wrecking yard, got them, because we were going to actually buy a brand new set, but we needed these plugs. And we couldn't find the plugs, so I thought, well, very least we can maybe get some plugs. But there was a set of fans. They work. These are supposed to be basically the best of the cheap setups, but they do move a lot of air. So we fabbed up some brackets, like mounting brackets, so that they actually mount properly. So if you ever ask to change them, he just pulls these two bolts and then they'll come out. So we just made up these little brackets. I tigged them on. These are the original, or the brackets that we made to hold them in there. Just tig that on quick. So the rad is basically ready to go now. We need to do a couple more things here before we put the rad back in, because hopefully this is the last time we have to take the rad out. But what I wanted to show you guys, we just bled the brakes. I talked about that a little bit ago. We put the tires back on. What I wanted to talk about was building spark plug wires. If you guys have never built spark plug wires, then you'll get to see how to build spark plug wires. Not that I'm like the best person at it, but I have done it quite a few times. Losing our cardboard. If you guys are wondering why I have cardboard on here, is it keeps the fins from getting all screwed up. So if you put a piece of cardboard over it, you don't have to worry about the fins and tubes getting screwed up. I also leave it on the roll for welding as well, because if you get a dab of filler metal that doesn't want to go where you want it to, it'll drop on the tube and it'll stick to the tube. And that's basically what originally happened to Luke's rad. So we don't want that to happen again. So we keep cardboard. I put cardboard on both sides. And for mock-up purposes, I always do that on that stuff. you know, something pulling in and out all the time, because they get screwed up and they just don't look nice. So, all right, guys, let's build some wires. So for you guys, I actually just bought these crimpers because the other ones that I had, I can't find. So we actually just went and bought these, and these are actually nicer than the ones I had anyway. But these are the crimpers. This is the thing it came in. I'll put a link in the description if I can find one for these. And this is they're MSD style ones, or like brand ones. Part number is 35051. And like I said, I'll put them in the description if I can find them. All right, so let's build some wires. So super easy to do. Now these are build your own wires. They're actually a hybrid between two different wire styles. Actually, these are Performance World wires, but they have a ceramic end on them. And then we're using the LS, build your own LS wire boot kit. And there's the boots. These are the little metal pieces. They're actually all linked together to start with on a little thing, but I broke them off there already. And then there's some little plastic insulators that have to go on after. They just go on the end, but I'll show you that in a minute. So pretty easy to do if you've never done your own wires. We marked them, figured out where everything needed to be. So I'm gonna chop off the excess here so we have something to pull on. Spark plug wire. Dielectric grease is your friend when you're doing this. You want to put dielectric grease on the wire. You are going to get messy doing this, so if you don't like stuff on your hands, you probably want to put gloves on. You want to give her a good dose of dielectric grease on the wire, and then shoot a little bit inside the end of the boot there where we're going to shove this on. You want to be careful with these ones being they're ceramic. Keep banging off the floor too many times and you'll break them, so that would suck. And all you do is just shove that on in there. And if you're using paint marker, you can use, the reason I cut them a little long is so I can grab them like that and pull them. So we put paint marker on there. If you didn't put if you have paint marker, this paint marker seems to be sticking really well, but usually what I'll do is before I'll pull that through on everyone, usually what I'll do is I'll actually measure them with a tape measure, and then if that mark comes off, then you don't have to figure out what you're trying to do, right? So cut the wire off. I use close cuts for this, so you get a really nice cut on it, because you can't screw the end of this wire up, and I'll show you. So on these crimpers, so if you're doing, these are single crimps, so I don't have one of the dual crimps, but basically there's just one spot here that you crimp off. On the double crimps, there's another one, let me screwdriver. There's another one in here, so you would crimp this little tiny one in here, which this doesn't have, and then you would crimp this one. That's what this is for. So if you look at the very front, that's for that the small little crimp, and then you have your cutter one for your wire, and then the other one is the crimp for this. So what we need to do first, all of these, I find that you have to squish them a little bit, otherwise you can't get them to go inside the tool. So we're gonna use the cutter part on this. Set it in there. I'm going double the width. I go double the width of however wide that blade is, so you get lots of engagement. And then what you do, just work that back and forth. These ones have reinforcement in them. See how they have a bunch of little fibers in there? Some of them don't have that, and you can just pull it off real easy. But then what we need to do is cut those little fibers off, but you want to be very careful not to hurt that center core, because that's what your actual spark comes down. And if you screw that up, you now have to shorten the wire. And if you are making perfect length wires, basically means you need to buy another wire. These ones are actually just a touch long. I told the boys to make them just a touch long. And you want to make sure you get that. It is fiberglass, so you probably should have gloves on, but it doesn't bother me, so. And it doesn't help there's dielectric grease all over those, so everything's sticking to everything. But, so you get this is your center cord that your actual fire comes down. And what you need to do is bend that over, but you don't want to do a really sharp bend on the end there. You want to keep a little bit of slack in it. That's how I do it anyway. And then you put your terminal like this on top of that wire. And get it in the right spot, kind of like so. And then you're going to put your crimper tool on there. Get that where you want it to be. Like I said, sometimes this can be challenging. Just want to take your time, make sure you get everything the way you want. Get it in there just the way you want, and then all you got to do is just bring her down until she clicks. That's all there is to it. Pretty simple. Like I said, sometimes you have to fight with them a little. I should have crimped that one just a little bit more prior. It would have fit a little bit. And then there's these little plastic, I believe they're for insulation or insulators. And there's a split in those, and these just go round side out. Like a little rounded piece on the outside, so the rounded piece goes out. And then they just fit on there like so. So now all we got to do is just pull this wire up. Usually what I'll do is I'll go plug it into the coil first, and then I'll slide the boot up afterwards because I want to make sure that engages properly in the actual coil. So pretty simple. And we have these little sleeves on there, so the wires always go back in the same spot if you ever have them off. For these ones, you probably don't really need to have it. But Luke said, let's put them on anyway, because I prefer just to have them, so it's whatever. Personal preference on that. If you're doing like a small block or a big block and they're all different lengths, those are kind of nice because then if you never have to worry about being in a, well, I shouldn't say never have to worry about being in a hurry, but you never have to worry about putting them on the wrong spot if they're numbered, as long as you know where what the cap is. So anyways, that's as easy it is doing these. Like I said, I'll put a link down in the description for these pliers if you're interested in buying a set. And you use my affiliate link, I make a little tiny commission, which helps the channel. All right, I'm gonna go back into time lapse and I'm gonna bang out the rest of these wires. time it moves under its own power since Luke has owned it. What's that?
Literally spraying water out.
I'm gonna say it might be warm.
I'm getting peed on.
I'm gonna say it might be warm.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, you shredded a belt, you blew the belt. Blew the belt right out of her.
Yeah, I figured that was gonna happen.
Ouch, don't touch the rat. That's wrapped around.
All right, guys, so I didn't do an outro, so I guess you get just to watch me kind of fumble around with the camera for the last couple minute or so. Anyways, the one we figured out why it kicked the belt off. And I kind of figured it was going to do it, but one of the idler pulleys, the spacer there's a spacer bracket that's not right, so we're gonna have to pull that bracket off, weld it up, and machine it. Not a huge deal, being I have all the equipment to do so and the knowledge, so that's not a huge deal to fix. We're going to fix that. We're also going to change some other stuff around because, well, obviously we want to make it better, but we're going to do that tomorrow, so stay tuned, and hopefully we'll be able to actually do a test drive with this thing more than up and down the street. But that was definitely a win for us. The amount of time that we have spent on the thing, you know, a test drive brings everybody's spirits up and all that jazz. So we got some wiring to do and a few touch-ups, fix that, and we should be good to go. Like, subscribe, hit me down in the comments, and remember, it's not rocket science.